Every morning Milo waited by my bed before I even opened my eyes, not meowing, not pawing at the blanket for food, just watching, still and quiet, like he was checking to see if my chest was still rising and falling. I used to laugh about it. My wife used to joke that we had the world's strangest cat. Then came the morning that changed how our whole family saw him. We found out an orange tabby cat could do something none of us thought was possible. He could sense when someone we loved was running out of time. Milo came into our lives 4 years ago, half-starved, found under a porch during a cold snap nobody was ready for. My daughter spotted him first, a small orange shape pressed into the corner, shivering, too weak to run. We didn't plan on keeping him. We already had a dog. We already had enough on our plates. But he wouldn't stop following her, wouldn't stop looking up at us like he already belonged. So he stayed. From the beginning, Milo wasn't like other cats. He didn't act like he understood he was a cat at all. He sat at the dinner table like one of the kids. He climbed onto the couch at exactly 7 o'clock to watch the evening news with my father-in-law. He slept on pillows, not cat beds. He followed people room to room, the way a dog might, except quieter, watching more, saying less. She'd spent 30 years as a nurse before she retired, and old habits don't leave a person just because they stop wearing the badge. Every morning, without fail, she checked her own blood pressure, counted her pulse at the wrist, laid out her morning pills in a neat row on the kitchen table. And every morning Milo was there, sitting on the counter's edge, tail curled around his paws, eyes tracking her hands like he was memorizing the routine. At first we thought it was just curiosity. Cats like small movements, don't they? Little rituals to watch. But it went further than watching. He started carrying things. A balled-up sock dropped gently at Grandma's feet, like it was something important. A tissue nudged toward my son's hand the second he sneezed. A single meow, sharp, deliberate, every time someone in the house coughed. My father-in-law started calling him the family doctor, and we'd all laugh about it over dinner. Dr. Milo checking vitals, he'd say, and Milo would blink slowly, like he agreed with the title. It became one of those jokes that gets told so many times it stops feeling like a joke. Just something true about our house, something true about our cat. He refused to leave Grandma's side most mornings, sat pressed against her ankles while she made coffee, waited outside the bathroom door, slept at the foot of her bed instead of ours, even though she never once fed him. We didn't think much of it. He was just attached to her. Cats do that sometimes, we told ourselves. Bond with one person and stay close. We had no idea he was paying attention to something we couldn't see yet. One morning, everything felt ordinary. Coffee brewing, sunlight coming in low through the kitchen blinds, Grandma humming to herself while she counted out her pills. And then, without any warning at all, Milo stopped acting like Milo. That alone should have told us something. He never missed a meal, not once in 4 years. But that morning the bowl sat untouched while he paced the kitchen, tail low, ears flicking toward the hallway. Then came the meowing. Not his usual soft chirp when he wanted attention. This was sharper, insistent, the kind of sound that makes you stop what you're doing. He ran to Grandma's bedroom door and scratched at it, hard enough to leave marks in the wood. "He's just being dramatic," my wife said, half laughing, pouring her coffee. Someone didn't get enough attention this morning. We'd said things like that about Milo 100 times before. It was always something small, a toy, a closed door. This felt no different. Except Milo didn't stop. He ran to the kitchen, looked at us, ran back to the bedroom door, pawed at our legs one after another, tugging at something in us we hadn't learned to listen to yet. Almost like he was trying to say, "Come with me, now." My father-in-law finally set down his newspaper. All right, he muttered, standing up. "Let's see what all the fuss is about." He opened the door. Grandma was sitting up in bed, but something was wrong with the way she was sitting. Her hand gripped the blanket too tightly. Her face had gone pale, almost gray at the edges. When she tried to speak, the words came out slow and tangled. She started. "I don't feel right." The room changed in an instant. My wife was already dialing. My father-in-law was at her side, holding her shoulders steady, saying her name over and over like it could anchor her to the moment. Milo jumped onto the bed and pressed himself against her hip. He didn't move again. Not when the paramedics arrived. Not when they gently lifted her onto the stretcher. He stayed as close as he was allowed, right up until the front door. The house felt unbearably quiet after they left. Just the 4 of us, me, my wife, our 2 kids, standing in the kitchen, staring at an empty doorway. Milo sat by the window for the rest of the morning, watching the driveway like he expected the car to come back any second. At the hospital, the waiting room felt too bright, too sterile, too slow. Every minute stretched longer than it should have. Doctors moved in and out with careful faces, the kind that don't tell you anything and everything at once. Finally, a nurse came to find us. Grandma was stable. They'd caught it in time, a dangerous drop in blood pressure, something that could have gone very differently if it had gone unnoticed even 20 minutes longer. 20 minutes. That was roughly how long Milo had spent scratching at that door before anyone listened. Grandma was calmer once she was settled into her hospital room, but still shaken, still tired in a way none of us had seen before. She kept asking about Milo. Not about work, not about the house, about the cat pacing our living room floor, waiting for something none of us could explain to him. That evening, one of the nurses overheard my daughter crying in the hallway, telling another nurse how much their cat loved Grandma. Something about the story must have stuck with her, because she came back a few minutes later with an unusual offer. "We don't normally do this," she said, "but I think it might help her. Would you like to bring him in? Just for a few minutes." We didn't hesitate. My son ran out to the car, where Milo had been curled up on a blanket in his carrier the entire time, refusing to settle. The moment the carrier door opened in that hospital room, Milo moved straight for the bed. No hesitation, no fear of the machines or the unfamiliar smell of antiseptic. He climbed up beside Grandma and settled against her arm, and for the first time since the ambulance had taken her away, Grandma smiled. By the next morning, word had spread through the whole floor. The cat who wouldn't leave, the cat who somehow knew, the cat curled against an elderly patient's side like he'd done it 1,000 times before. One of the younger nurses, more for laughs than anything, dug a toy stethoscope out of a donation bin meant for the children's ward. She looped it gently around Milo's neck as a joke. "There," she said, grinning, "now you're official. Cats don't tolerate things around their necks." But Milo just sat there blinking slowly, seeming almost pleased with himself. He wore it the rest of the day without a single attempt to remove it. Word of the hospital cat reached patients on other floors. A woman in her 80s, recovering from a fall, asked if he could visit her room. Then a young boy waiting for surgery, quiet and scared, asked the same. The nurses, half out of curiosity and half out of kindness, started walking Milo through the halls on a soft leash between visits to Grandma. He seemed to understand in his own way that this wasn't playtime. He didn't run. He didn't chase the light from the windows or bat at loose wires the way he did at home. He moved slowly through each room, sniffing the air, studying faces and settling beside whoever seemed to need him most. With the elderly man in room 214, he sat for nearly 20 minutes without moving, letting the man rest a trembling hand on his back. "That's the happiest I've felt all week," the man told a nurse afterward, and somehow, within a day, that sentence had traveled through the entire staff break room. Morale on the floor changed in a way no one could fully explain. Nurses who'd been running on empty for months started smiling more during their shifts. Even the doctors, usually rushing between patients, would slow their pace outside Grandma's door just to see if the cat was there. Through it all, Milo's real focus never wavered. Every evening, once the visiting hours quieted and the hallway lights dimmed, he returned to Grandma's side and stayed there. He curled against her hip while she slept. He rested his head gently near her hand, as if checking, still checking, the way he always had. Doctors began to notice something in her recovery numbers. Her blood pressure was stabilizing faster than expected. Her appetite was returning. She was sleeping more deeply, waking calmer. "We can't put it in a chart," one doctor admitted with a small laugh, "but comfort matters. Emotional ease matters. Whatever he's doing for her, it's helping." Grandma grew stronger each day after that. Color came back to her face. Her voice steadied. She started sitting up on her own, then walking short distances down the hall, always with Milo trotting a few careful steps behind her, refusing to let her out of his sight. Somewhere along the way, one of the nurses started calling him Dr. Milo, and the name stuck. Patients asked for him by that name. Staff wrote it on his little laminated visitor badge, half as a joke, half because it had simply become true. The story of the orange cat, who seemed to know things before anyone else did, spread through the hospital like warmth through a cold room. Photos of him and his tiny stethoscope were pinned to the nurses' station bulletin board. Someone even sketched a small cartoon of him beside the words "Best Bedside Manner" in the building. Grandma would laugh softly every time she saw it, shaking her head. "You have no idea what you started," she'd tell him, scratching gently behind his ears. He'd just close his eyes and lean into her hand, the way he always had, long before any of this began. Finally, after nearly 2 weeks, the day came that we'd all been waiting for. Grandma's doctor walked in that morning with a smile instead of a clipboard full of concern. "Good news," he said. "You're going home today." The room erupted in quiet joy. Hugs, a few happy tears, Grandma gripping his hand like she couldn't quite believe it. But before we could even start gathering her things, one of the nurses appeared in the doorway with a knowing look on her face. "Actually," she said, glancing at Milo, "the staff has one more surprise. For him." Nurses, doctors, even a few patients well enough to walk stepped out of their rooms to watch. Someone had strung a small handwritten banner above the nurse's station. Someone else had baked a tray of cupcakes, the kind with little paw prints piped on in blue frosting. Grandma sat in a wheelchair near the center of it all, dressed and ready to go home, but clearly in no hurry to leave just yet. The head nurse stepped forward, holding something small in her hands, a tiny badge, laminated and threaded onto a thin ribbon collar. She knelt down and slipped it gently around Milo's neck, right where the toy stethoscope had rested for the past 2 weeks. The badge read, "Honorary Comfort Doctor." The hallway erupted in applause. A few of the nurses were openly crying. Grandma pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes glassy, watching Milo sit perfectly still like he understood the weight of the moment, even if he couldn't understand the words. "He earned it," the nurse said, laughing through her own tears. "More than some of us did." We drove home that afternoon with the windows cracked, spring air drifting through the car, Grandma quiet and content beside Milo's carrier. He mewed once when we turned onto our street, like he recognized it, like he knew exactly where he belonged. Life slipped back into its rhythm after that, though nothing about our house felt quite the same. Milo still did his morning rounds, checking on each of us the way he always had, pausing by my son's door, sniffing at my daughter's backpack, watching my wife pour her coffee with that same unreadable focus. But now, when he sat beside Grandma each morning, watching her check her own blood pressure out of old habit, none of us laughed it off as a quirky routine anymore. We understood, in a way we couldn't fully explain, that he was still watching over her, still doing the job no one had ever taught him. He refused to ignore anyone who felt unwell. If my son had a stomachache, Milo was there, pressed against his side, patient and still. If my daughter cried over a hard day at school, he'd appear in her doorway within minutes, climbing quietly into her lap. Word about Dr. Milo didn't stay contained to the hospital for long. A neighbor who'd heard the story from one of the nurses started asking, half joking, half serious, if he could come check on her elderly mother down the street. Then another neighbor asked. Then another. Before long, Milo had a small, informal route through the neighborhood. Porches he'd visit, older folks who left their screen doors propped open just in case he wandered by. He never seemed to mind the extra attention. If anything, he seemed to expect it, the way he expected everything now, calm and certain in a way that never once looked like performance. Some evenings Grandma would sit in her favorite chair by the window, a blanket over her knees, watching the last light fade over the yard. Milo would jump up beside her, circle once and settle against her side. One evening she rested her hand on his back and spoke softly, more to herself than to him. "You may not understand medicine," she said, "but you understand people better than most humans do." Milo closed his eyes. A slow, steady purr rose from his chest, filling the quiet room. The camera of memory pulls back on evenings like that one. Grandma reading in her chair, glasses low on her nose, Milo curled beside her, warm afternoon light spilling gold across the floor. The house settled into an easy stillness, the kind that only comes after real fear has passed and left something gentler behind. Some heroes wear white coats, others wear orange fur, and sometimes the best doctor in the room is the one who simply reminds us we're never alone.